I wasn't expecting anything new in my life at 70. Not love, not change, certainly not scandal. Just tea in the mornings, the humming of my garden's wind chimes, and the occasional call from my daughter, who always seemed in a rush. It was on a Tuesday, ordinary and gray, that he knocked on my door. He was just the delivery boy. A bit too cheerful for a rainy morning, holding a bag of groceries I didn't remember ordering. "Mrs. Adeline?" he asked. I blinked. "Yes, you ordered extra chamomile tea and the gluten-free biscuits again." I laughed. Did I? My memory's getting worse. He smiled. Kind eyes. Bright, but not pushy. I noticed his name tag, Jordan. Young, maybe 25. Tall, athletic, with a soft voice that reminded me of my husband, the one who died 11 years ago. That was the first time. I thought it'd be the last. But Jordan kept showing up. Some weeks with deliveries, others with, "Hey, I was nearby and thought I'd check on you." I'd laugh and tell him I was fine. And he'd say, "Good. But you shouldn't be alone so much." The neighbors started to notice. They stared longer when he'd mow my lawn, fix the squeaky gate, or just sit on the porch sipping tea with me. "Your grandson is so helpful," one of them smirked. I didn't correct her, because I wasn't ready to admit it either. That somewhere between the cups of tea and those stories he told me about his childhood, I had started waiting for him. For his knock. For his laugh. And somewhere between the silence of my empty living room and the way he held my hand when I stumbled on the steps, I realized I wasn't just imagining it. He cared. And not in a way a boy cares for a grandmother. No, this was different. It scared me, it excited me, and it was about to turn my entire life upside down. I told myself it was nothing. That Jordan was just a kind young man who pitied an old woman living alone. That maybe I was reading too much into it. But my heart betrayed me. It fluttered every time he came by with those warm eyes and that ridiculous grin. The neighbors' comments grew louder, more pointed. "Is he your caretaker now? Does he get paid to be here? Oh, that boy must really want something." And maybe the cruelest of them all. "You should be careful, Adeline. Young men like that, they know how to use lonely women." I started to doubt, not him, myself, until the night of the storm. The power had gone out, and the wind was howling like an old ghost through the trees. I had candles lit, but the cold made the house feel like a cave. I wrapped myself in 2 blankets and sat by the window watching the storm tear at the garden. Then the doorbell rang. It was Jordan, soaked, shivering, holding a plastic bag. "You didn't answer my calls," he said. "I got worried. Brought you dinner." He handed me a takeout box still warm. "I figured you wouldn't cook with the power out." I stared at him. This young man, so full of life. He should have been out with friends at a bar anywhere but here with someone 3 times his age. "Why are you doing this?" I asked. He sat down across from me, his eyes meeting mine with no hesitation. "Because I care about you, and I think you care about me too." My heart stopped. He continued, voice softer now. "I don't care what people say. I know how this looks. But I know what I feel." I didn't speak. I couldn't. Because a part of me had waited decades, yes, decades, for someone to look at me like that. Without pity, without judgment. Just love. Pure and raw and terrifying. "I know this is crazy," he said. "I know you'll probably tell me I'm confused. That I should go find someone my age. But I'm not leaving until you tell me how you feel." I cried. Not the gentle kind, the ugly, shaking kind. Because for the first time in years, I felt seen, desired, alive. And as thunder cracked the sky behind us, I reached across the table and held his hand. "I'm scared," I whispered. "So am I," he smiled. That night, we didn't kiss. We didn't do anything that could be written off as scandalous. We just held each other in the flickering candlelight, listening to the storm while the rest of the world began to whisper. Louder. 3 days later, I heard the front door slam open. "Mom, what the hell is going on?" It was Claire, my daughter. Her voice was sharp, trembling with the kind of fury only a daughter can have when she feels something sacred has been broken. I turned from the kitchen tea towel in my hands. She stood there in the hallway, eyes scanning the room like a detective hunting for a crime. "I got a call from Mrs. Denning across the street," she spat. "She said there's a young man practically living here." I didn't answer. She stormed toward the dining room, saw Jordan's jacket hanging on the chair. Is he here? Is he sleeping here? Mom, are you out of your mind? I felt the blood drain from my face. No, Claire, he's not here right now, but what, who is he, Mom? What does he want from you? Are you giving him money? That one cut deep. Claire, I said, steadying myself. He's not using me. She laughed bitterly. Really, a 26-year-old just happens to fall in love with his 70-year-old grocery client. What is this? Some twisted fantasy? Her words were fire, but I didn't flinch. His name is Jordan, I said firmly. And he hasn't asked me for a single thing, not once. Her expression cracked for a moment, but only for a moment. Mom, he's using you for something. You're vulnerable. You've been alone too long. You don't see what this is. I looked her straight in the eyes. No, Claire. You don't see what this is. You haven't seen me for years. Not really. You call twice a month, send flowers on my birthday, and then expect me to just fade away quietly like some broken record. Her mouth opened, then shut. I continued, voice breaking. I may be 70, but I'm not dead. I feel things. I laugh. I cry. I still want companionship. And God help me, I still want to be loved. Is that so hard to believe? She said nothing, just turned quietly, walked out the door, and didn't look back. That night, Jordan came over. I told him what happened. He listened, silent. Then he held me tighter than ever before and whispered, "Let them talk. Let them think whatever they want." I'm not going anywhere, and I believed him. But I also knew the real storm hadn't even begun. It wasn't supposed to be a big deal. Just a photo, just for us. We had gone out of town for the weekend to a little cabin by the lake. Jordan said he wanted me to escape the noise, and truth be told, I needed it. The judgment, the whispers, my daughter's silence, it was all weighing on me like wet wool. He brought a camera, an old Polaroid actually. Said it made moments feel more real. The lake was quiet. The water shimmered like glass. I wore a soft lavender dress, nothing fancy. But when he saw me step out of the cabin that evening, he stopped. Just stared. "You look breathtaking," he said, and he meant it. He handed me a flower crown he made himself, wildflowers, daisies, and bits of lavender. "Wear this," he smiled, "just for fun." I laughed. I look ridiculous. "No," he said softly. "You look like someone I'd marry." I froze. He stepped closer. "I'm serious, Adeline. I don't care what anyone says. I want this. I want you. And I want people to see us." I was silent for a long time. Then I nodded. So we took the photo. He set the timer ran to stand beside me, and right before the camera clicked, he pulled me close and kissed my cheek. Click! The photo slid out. A perfect moment. A perfect lie, or maybe a truth no one was ready for. We laughed, we kissed, we danced by the firelight that night. And I didn't care who saw us, until someone did. I posted the picture the next morning on my private Facebook page. I don't even know why. Maybe I was tired of hiding. Maybe I just wanted anyone to know that I was happy. But by that evening, it had spread like wildfire. My niece sent me a screenshot. "Is this real?" Claire texted. "What the hell are you doing, Mom?" And then the comments began. "She's lost her mind. This has to be fake. He's marrying her for money, obviously. Disgusting." Someone even shared the photo to a public forum for scams. They called him a predator, called me a fool. But what none of them knew was that photo wasn't just a moment, it was the beginning. Because 5 days later, we were going to do it for real. No pretending, no more hiding. I was going to marry Jordan. I didn't plan a big wedding. How could I? Who would come? But Jordan didn't care about guest lists or centerpieces. He just looked at me one morning while we were having breakfast and said, "Let's do it. Let's stop waiting for the world to catch up." I smiled. "You really want to marry an old woman with arthritis and a bad hip?" He leaned over, kissed my forehead, and said, "Only if she promises to dance with me, even if it's just a slow sway in the living room." So we made it official. A small ceremony. Just us, an officiant, and 2 of Jordan's friends who promised to keep things quiet. It was going to be at the same lakeside cabin where we took the photo. But I made one mistake. I mailed a wedding invitation to Claire. I didn't expect her to come. Honestly, I didn't expect her to even respond. But I wanted her to know it wasn't just a phase or a fantasy. It was real. I needed her to see that. She didn't reply. But 2 days later, my doorbell rang. It was my sister, red-faced, furious. "What are you thinking?" she shouted, shoving the invitation in my hands. "A wedding. You're marrying this boy. What is wrong with you?" I tried to calm her down, offered tea. She swatted the cup away. "He's taking advantage of you, Adeline. Everyone can see it. You just don't want to admit it. You're embarrassed to be old, and you're chasing some kind of twisted fairy tale to feel young again." Her words stung more than I wanted to admit. But I stood my ground. "No, I'm not embarrassed to be old," I said quietly. "I'm embarrassed that my own family thinks I should just roll over and disappear." She didn't speak. Just stared at me, maybe realizing for the first time that I wasn't the fragile, lonely widow anymore. "I love him," I said. "And if that's so hard to understand, then maybe you never really knew me at all." She left without another word. The next morning, the story had spread. Apparently, someone had leaked the wedding details. Local gossip blogs picked it up. Then it spread to Reddit. Then Twitter. People I'd never met were suddenly calling me things I won't repeat here. Some thought it was beautiful. Most thought it was disgusting. And yet, in the middle of that digital firestorm, Jordan held my hand, calm, grounded. "We're going to do this," he said. "And when they see the photos, let them talk." I nodded, because they could say whatever they wanted. But the moment I walked down that short wooden dock in a pale blue dress that matched the sky, with Jordan waiting for me barefoot and grinning like a boy at summer camp, I knew I had never felt more alive. The ceremony was quiet. Gentle waves lapped at the dock. The sun filtered through the trees like golden silk, and the breeze smelled of pine and wildflowers. Jordan wore a simple white shirt sleeves rolled up. I wore the same lavender dress I had on the night we took that first photo. There were no violins, no choir, no crowd. Just vows whispered between two souls who refused to apologize for finding each other in the most unexpected way. "I Jordan take you, Adeline?" His voice cracked halfway through, but he kept going. When it was my turn, I looked into his eyes and said, "They say love has an expiration date. But maybe love doesn't care about calendars." The officiant smiled. "With the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife." We kissed. Not a showy kiss, not one meant for cameras or headlines. Just two people sealing a promise against the odds, against the noise. But oh, the noise was coming. Because after the ceremony, Jordan's friend snapped a few pictures with his phone. He captured that kiss. My hands in his. The rings. The flower crown. The smile on my wrinkled face that hadn't surfaced in decades. And later that evening, Jordan, naive, proud, joyful, posted one of those photos on his Instagram. The caption was simple. She said yes. It exploded. Within an hour, strangers had flooded the post. Thousands of comments. Some sweet, many vile. "She's old enough to be his grandmother. He's clearly after her money. This has to be fake. Disgusting. Shame on him." News outlets picked it up the next morning. The viral wedding shocking the internet, 70-year-old bride marries 26-year-old groom. Claire called, screaming. "Is this a joke? Did you really go through with it? Do you know how embarrassed I am?" My friends saw it before I did. I let her scream. Then I said softly, "I didn't marry him for you. I married him for me." There was silence on the line. "You always told me to follow my heart," I continued. "But when I finally did, it wasn't the kind of heart you approved of." She hung up. I wish I could say that didn't hurt. But it did. Deeply. And yet, that night, as I lay beside my husband, listening to the sounds of the lake and the crickets and the fire crackling gently in the stove, I realized something. The world can scream, it can judge, it can mock, but it can't rewrite our story. And our story had just begun. The week after our wedding was supposed to be our honeymoon. Instead, it turned into a war zone. Every time I opened my phone, there were new notifications, hundreds of them. Direct messages from strangers. Email subject lines screaming, "Shame on you." Some messages even said I deserved to die. That I was a predator. That I had stolen his youth. Others accused Jordan of being a con artist, a gold digger, a disgrace to men. We tried to laugh it off at first, but it wore us down inch by inch. Even Jordan, who had been my rock through it all, started to pull into himself. I'd catch him staring out the window for hours. Quiet, heavy. And then the first letter arrived. It wasn't an email. It was a real letter addressed to me. No return address. Inside, a single page typed. Bold font, no greeting, no sign-off. You're disgusting. This is unnatural. You make women look desperate and pathetic. Stop embarrassing yourself before it's too late. I stood frozen in my kitchen, the letter trembling in my hand. Jordan saw it, took it from me, read it, and then without a word tore it in half and threw it into the trash. But I knew he was hurting too. We had turned from a quiet, strange love story into a viral punching bag. The world didn't just dislike us, it hated us. Then came the news anchor. One evening, just as I was about to turn off the TV, I caught the tail end of a segment on a national talk show. A smirking host held up our wedding photo. Said, well, here's something new. A 70-year-old bride and her 26-year-old Prince Charming. What do you think, folks, true love or a retirement plan? The audience laughed. I turned off the TV, sat in silence. My heart hurt in places I didn't know existed. But the next morning, everything changed. Because someone knocked on our door. And it wasn't a neighbor or a reporter. It was a young woman, no older than 30, holding a manila envelope to her chest. Are you Mrs. Adeline? I hesitated. Yes. She smiled nervously. I saw your story. I wasn't going to say anything, but then I just had to. You gave me the courage to do something I never thought I could. She handed me the envelope. I left my abusive husband last night, packed a bag, got on a bus, and came to stay with my sister. I saw your story online, and I realized I don't have to follow anyone's rules but my own. So, thank you. I didn't know what to say. I just cried, hugged her, let her cry too. When she left, Jordan looked at me with wide eyes. One person, he said, that's all it takes. And for the first time in days, I smiled. Because maybe, just maybe, we weren't the joke. We were the mirror, and the world didn't like what it saw. I hadn't planned on telling my grandson. Not yet, maybe not ever. He was only 19, a bright, sensitive boy. Off at college, chasing dreams, still stumbling his way through early adulthood. I didn't want him caught in the storm of our scandal. He had enough pressure on his shoulders without explaining to his roommates why his grandmother had become a meme. But life doesn't care about your timing. He called me one evening, voice tight and quiet. Grandma, is it true? I froze. I hadn't heard his voice in weeks. Now it sounded like he was holding back tears. Is what true, baby? I asked, even though I already knew. You married someone my age. I took a deep breath. Yes, I did. Silence. Then a soft laugh. It wasn't joyful. It was sad, confused, almost hurt. I don't get it. Is he taking advantage of you? Did he manipulate you? Are you okay? I'm okay, I said gently. More than okay. And no, he didn't manipulate me. I wasn't looking for this. It just happened. He went quiet again. I'm trying to understand, he said. But it's hard. People are talking grandma, online, even at school. I know, I whispered. I'm sorry. But then came the question I didn't expect. Did you love Grandpa the same way? I didn't answer right away. Because that question cut deeper than all the hate mail, all the headlines, all the whispers. It forced me to admit something I'd buried for decades. I loved your grandfather, I said carefully. He was kind, loyal, a good man. He gave me a life, a home, a family. But I never really felt seen. Not the way Jordan sees me. The silence on the other end was heavy. I was the dutiful wife, I continued. I cooked. I smiled. I folded clothes and held back tears when I felt empty. I did what women of my time were taught to do, settle. I didn't know, he murmured. Of course you didn't. You weren't supposed to. I wore the mask well, but now I've taken it off. He let out a breath, a long one. I'm not sure I understand everything he said. But if you're really happy, Grandma? I am, I replied. Another pause. Okay, he whispered. Then I'll stand with you. That was the first time I cried in days. Not because of pain, but because of hope. And as I hung up, I turned to Jordan and told him the truth I'd never admitted aloud. I've never been in love until now. He didn't say a word. He just kissed me slow and careful, like he was sealing a vow deeper than any wedding ever could. It started with a phone call from my lawyer. "Adeline," he said carefully, "you might want to come in. There's been some concern raised by your daughter." I already knew what this was about. The wedding had stirred everything up, but this wasn't about love anymore. This was about money. I arrived at the office calm but trembling inside. My lawyer slid a folder across the desk, my will updated just 6 months ago. I had made modest adjustments, nothing drastic. A small fund set aside for Jordan should anything happen to me. The rest remained, as it always had, to Claire, my grandchildren, and a few charities. "She's alleging undue influence," he said softly. "She's claiming Jordan pressured you to make these changes." I laughed bitterly. Pressured me. The only pressure I've felt is from her. The letter Claire had submitted to his office was filled with cold words, manipulated, exploited, cognitive decline. She doesn't know what she's doing. I sat there blinking at my own daughter's handwriting. "She thinks I've lost my mind," I whispered. My lawyer looked at me gently. "She thinks she's protecting you." "No, she's protecting control," I snapped. "And she can't stand that she's not the center of the story anymore." When I got home that evening, Jordan was in the kitchen, stirring soup. He didn't ask about the meeting. Maybe he knew. Maybe he was scared to know. I sat down, watched him for a moment, then said, "She's trying to take me to court." He stopped stirring. "I haven't even left you anything significant," I continued. "Just a small fund. She wants it all, Jordan, the house, the bank accounts, the narrative." Jordan turned, wiping his hands. "Adeline, I don't care about the money. I never have." "I know that," I said, "but she doesn't. And the worst part, I think she needs to believe you're a monster. Because if you're not, then maybe she's the one who failed me." The next morning it got worse. A leak. Someone, maybe Claire, maybe someone in her circle, leaked a copy of my will online. Suddenly the story changed. The headlines screamed, "Young husband inherits fortune from elderly wife. Gold digger or genuine love. Shocking 70-year-old woman. Leaves money to 26-year-old groom." It wasn't even a large inheritance. But the media doesn't care about truth. They care about blood. We received over 2,000 messages in 48 hours. People telling me to wake up. People telling Jordan to burn in hell. One message said, "You'll die alone and he'll spend your money on his real girlfriend." That one broke me. I locked myself in the bathroom. Stared at myself in the mirror. This old face. These hands. These tired, wrinkled eyes. Maybe they were right. Maybe I had made a fool of myself. But then Jordan knocked. Just once. Didn't barge in, didn't plead. Just said, "I'm here. I'm not leaving, no matter what they say." And for the 100th time since I met him, he reminded me what love is supposed to feel like. Not easy, not perfect, but steady and true. It happened on a Thursday. There was no warning, no dizzy spells, no chest pain. Just the sudden sound of shattering porcelain, the sensation of falling, and then nothing. When I woke up, everything was white. The walls, the sheets, the fluorescent lights buzzing softly above my head. Jordan was there, his hand holding mine, his eyes red tired. "You're awake," he whispered, voice cracking. Thank God. I blinked, my throat was dry. "What happened?" "You collapsed in the kitchen," he said. "Hit your head. You were out cold for 3 minutes. 3 minutes. 3 minutes where he thought I might be gone." The doctor came in not long after. Mild concussion, dehydration, stress-related fatigue. No heart attack, no stroke, but a warning. "You need to slow down," he said. "And more importantly, you need peace." Peace. What a foreign word that felt like lately. While I rested, nurses kept peeking in. Some smiled kindly, others not so much. I could feel their judgment even in silence. The whispers in the hallway. "That's her right, the viral bride." "I heard he's half her age." Poor woman. She probably doesn't know what she's doing. But I didn't care, not in that moment, because someone else walked into the room, and I almost didn't recognize her. Claire, my daughter. She stood at the doorway, eyes puffy, arms wrapped around herself like a child. "I saw the news," she said softly. "They said you collapsed." I nodded, couldn't find my voice. She stepped inside awkwardly, like she wasn't sure she was allowed. I didn't come here to fight," she continued. I saw the headline, and for the first time I thought, what if I lost you? Tears slipped down my cheeks before I could stop them. "I'm still here," I whispered. She sat beside me hesitant, eyes flicking toward Jordan then away. "I've been so angry," she admitted. "Not because of him, but because I didn't see it coming. I thought I knew everything about you. And then suddenly this life, this love without me in it." I squeezed her hand. "You're always in my heart, Claire. But this love saved me. In a way you may never fully understand." She nodded slowly, and for the first time she looked at Jordan. "You stayed with her?" she asked. He nodded every second. Claire's lip trembled. "Thank you." And just like that, something shifted. Not healed, not erased, but softened. That night in my hospital bed, as machines beeped and monitors blinked, I realized something. The heart can break in 1,000 different ways, but it can also open again if we let it. Even at 70, even in the eye of a storm. 3 weeks after I left the hospital, I hosted a dinner. Just a simple one, nothing extravagant. Roast chicken, garlic, mashed potatoes, green beans sautéed in butter. The kind of meal I hadn't made in years. I wore my hair pinned up my favorite blue dress and just a touch of lipstick. Not because I was trying to impress anyone, but because I wanted to feel whole. Jordan helped me set the table. He moved through the kitchen like he'd always belonged there, grabbing napkins, lighting candles, checking the oven like a man with a quiet mission. At exactly 6:03 p.m., the doorbell rang. Claire stood there with my grandson, and they weren't alone. Behind them was my sister. I froze. I hadn't spoken to her since she threw my wedding invitation on the floor. Claire stepped in first. "We brought dessert," she said, holding up a pie. My grandson leaned in and kissed my cheek. "Hey, Grandma, smells amazing." And then my sister. She just looked at me for a long moment. Then said softly, "I came to see for myself." I smiled. "You're welcome to." Dinner was awkward at first. Claire kept glancing at Jordan. Jordan stayed mostly quiet. My sister stared at her plate like it held answers to the universe. But then the unexpected happened. My grandson started telling a story, something about a college roommate who accidentally set off the dorm fire alarm by trying to cook frozen pizza in a toaster. We laughed. I mean, really laughed. Even Claire giggled. And Jordan. He laughed with his whole chest, that deep kind of laughter that makes everyone else join in without knowing why. It cracked the ice. By dessert, we were talking like a family again. Tentative, careful, but present. And then Claire cleared her throat. "I've been thinking," she said, glancing at Jordan. "I don't understand this. I probably never will. But I see that you love her. I see that you didn't run when things got ugly. And I see that she's happy." She looked at me, eyes glistening. "Mom, I just want you safe. That's all I ever wanted." I reached across the table, took her hand. "I know, sweetheart. And I want you to know. I never stopped loving you even when you didn't understand me." Then my sister chimed in, her voice a little shaky. "I judged you, Addie. I thought you'd lost your mind. But seeing you tonight, you're stronger than I've ever been." Jordan looked at me quietly, squeezing my hand beneath the table. And for a moment, just a flicker, it felt like the world had finally stopped spinning long enough for all of us to breathe in the same rhythm. After everyone left, Jordan held me close in the kitchen. He whispered, "You did it." "No," I whispered back. "We did. Love didn't fix everything, but it brought us back to the table. And sometimes, that's the bravest miracle of all. Viral stories don't last forever. After the outrage burned hot, it fizzled like a summer storm. The internet moved on to its next scandal. A celebrity divorce, a political meltdown, a dog that could skateboard. Suddenly, no one cared about the 70-year-old bride and her 26-year-old husband. And that was oddly comforting. We weren't trending anymore. We weren't headlines. We were just us. Quiet mornings, coffee on the porch, grocery runs, laughs over burnt pancakes. It didn't mean the stares stopped. Sometimes at restaurants, people still gave us that look. That mix of confusion, judgment, and silent accusation. But Jordan never flinched. He held my hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. Once at a farmer's market, a teenage girl walked up to us. She looked nervous, fidgety. Then she said, "I showed your story to my mom. She came out to us the next day. Said she was done hiding who she really was. So, thank you." And just like that, the weight of 1,000 cruel comments vanished in the wind. Because even if our love didn't fit in anyone else's box, it meant something. Jordan started painting again. He had studied art in college, but gave it up for a steady job. Now he spent hours in the sunroom splashing color across canvases, like he was reclaiming a part of himself. He painted me once, not the young me, not the bride me. The now me, wrinkles, laugh lines, my crooked smile, my tired eyes that had seen too much and loved anyway. "It's my favorite one," he said, hanging it above the fireplace. I looked at it and saw the truth he saw. Not a woman past her prime, but a woman who had survived, endured, and dared to love again. Sometimes we danced in the kitchen barefoot and laughing. Sometimes we fought about dishes, about clutter, about whether or not to adopt a cat. But every night without fail, he kissed me goodnight like he might never get the chance again. And I stopped asking why he loved me. I simply chose to believe him. Because love isn't always logical, sometimes it just is. And when the world moved on, when the headlines faded and the judgment died down, Jordan and I were still here, still choosing each other, every single day. It was a cold night in late November, when the silence between us felt heavier than ever. Jordan had been distant all day, no humming while he painted, no playful teasing while I folded laundry. Just quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you wonder if something is breaking and you're the last to know. We ate dinner in near silence. I watched him push food around his plate, never really eating. His eyes kept drifting to the window, like he was somewhere else entirely. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. "Jordan," I said gently but firmly, "talk to me." He looked up startled, like I had pulled him out of a dream. "I'm fine," he said too quickly. "No, you're not. You've barely looked at me all day." Did I do something?" He stood up, walked to the kitchen, then turned back. His jaw clenched. And then finally the truth came out. "I got a call from an old friend," he said. "Someone from school. He said he saw me in a magazine." I nodded, unsure where this was going. He told me I was throwing my life away, that I could still fix this, that it's not too late to be normal. That word, normal, it stung more than I expected. I stayed quiet, let him talk. I told him he didn't understand. But what if he's right? What if I gave up a future for something that won't last? What if one day you wake up and I'm just a caretaker with a wedding ring? The words hit hard, not because I hadn't thought them myself, but because hearing them aloud made them real. I stood, slowly walked over to him. "You think I haven't asked myself those same questions?" I whispered. "Every day I wonder if I'm being selfish, if I'm robbing you of something." His eyes met mine, and there was fear there. "Not of me, of losing me. I'm not young," I said. "And there will be days when I'm weak. Days when I forget. Days when my body fails me. But if you stay, I'll never stop loving you. I'll never lie to you. And I'll never forget what you gave me, what no one else ever dared to give." He looked at me for a long time. Then, his voice barely a breath, he said, "I'm not here because I couldn't be anywhere else, Adeline. I'm here because I don't want to be anywhere else." Then he reached into his back pocket, pulled out a tiny folded piece of paper. Worn edges, faded ink. He handed it to me. I unfolded it and read the words. "Promise her every day, even on the hard ones, that she is enough." My heart cracked open. "I wrote that the day I met you," he said softly. "I just never showed it to you. That night we didn't need music. We danced anyway in the living room, with the wind rattling the windows and the world outside fading into nothing. And I realized, sometimes the scariest part of love isn't losing it. It's believing you deserve it in the first place." It was buried in the back of my closet. An old shoebox covered in dust, filled with memories. I never thought I'd revisit photos, yellowed by time-dried roses from anniversaries, long past a faded silk handkerchief, and a bundle of folded letters tied with blue ribbon. One of them was meant only for me. I had written it long before I ever met Jordan, maybe 2 or 3 years into my widowhood. It was a goodbye letter, to love, to desire, to the idea that someone might ever want to know me again, really know me. I never mailed it, never showed it to anyone. Just wrote it in a moment of late-night honesty when the silence in my house felt unbearable, and the ghost of my younger self was too loud in my ears. I never meant for Jordan to read it, but he did. I was out that day picking up fresh flowers for the table, trying to bring some spring into our winter. When I returned, he was sitting at the dining table, the letter trembling in his hands. His eyes glassy with something I had never seen before. Pain, love, grief that didn't belong to him, but that he carried anyway. "Where did you find that?" I asked gently. "In the box," he said quietly. "I was looking for batteries." I sat across from him, my heart pounding. "I wasn't snooping," he added quickly. "But when I opened it, I saw my name on the envelope." I blinked. "Your name." He unfolded the letter again, and I gasped. He was right. Somehow, in some moment of forgotten instinct, I had addressed it to a name I hadn't even known yet. Jordan. I must have seen the name somewhere, maybe in a book, a movie, an article, and written it without thinking. Or maybe, deep down. I had already begun writing to the man who hadn't arrived yet. He looked at me with eyes full of something raw and trembling. "This is the most heartbreaking thing I've ever read," he whispered. "You really thought you were done. That no one would ever touch you again, not with love." I nodded, tears burning behind my lashes. Yes, I did. I had accepted that. He reached across the table, took my hands in his. "You were wrong," he said. So beautifully, wonderfully wrong. And then he cried. The strong, quiet man who had stood against the world for me, who had endured headlines, mockery, isolation, cried for the woman he loved before he even knew she existed. We sat there for what felt like hours, holding each other in the middle of that small dining room, surrounded by the ordinary things that now felt sacred. And for the first time in my life, I realized love doesn't just heal what's broken. Sometimes it resurrects what you thought was buried forever. I'm writing this now from the same porch where it all began. The wind chimes are still dancing. The garden's a little wilder now. So am I. Jordan is inside humming in the kitchen, probably burning toast again. He's grayer at the temples these days. I've gotten slower, more forgetful. My joints ache more in the morning, and my steps are measured. But my heart is fuller than I ever believed possible at 70. We never became a viral couple again. The world moved on as it always does. But here in this quiet life we built together, we kept choosing each other. Day after day. Storm after storm. We traveled, we painted. We adopted a dog named Mabel, who now rules the house. Claire visits more often. Sometimes she even brings cookies Jordan likes better than mine. My grandson graduated. He calls me for dating advice, believe it or not. We've laughed, we've cried, we've buried a few friends. We've lit birthday candles. We've made memories in the ordinary. And no, not everything has been easy. There are still days when people stare. Still online articles that resurface painting our love as spectacle. But we've learned to smile through it. Because what they never understood is this. Love is not about symmetry. It's not about matching timelines or shared demographics. It's about two souls who find each other in the noise and choose to stay. Choose to believe. Choose to build not for show, but for truth. If you're reading this now, if you've come to the end of our story, I want to leave you with something. Don't let the world's rules shrink your heart. Don't let fear talk you out of something that makes you feel alive. I was 70 when my life started over, when I fell in love for the first time, when I stopped surviving and started living. People thought Jordan was using me, but they were wrong. He saw me. He stood by me. And when they saw our wedding photos, when they saw the way he held my hand like it was made of gold, they realized something they didn't expect. This wasn't a scam. It was a miracle, and it still is. Every single morning, when I wake up and find him looking at me like I'm the sunrise. Adeline forever 70, forever loved.